Hello, Professor and everyone. This is our group's research topic is the Airbus corruption scandal. Our group's members are Liu Xinlei, Li Yanzhen, Han Yiwei, Yang Junyi, and Cheng Le. Cross-border commercial corruption is one of the core pain points in global economic governance. The Airbus corruption scandal, one of the largest corporate corruption cases in history, involved multiple countries and spanned over a decade. It clearly exposed numerous flaws in corporation governance, ethical standards, and cross-border regulation. Taking this case as a research subject, this study analyzes the background causes, impact, and lesson learned, aiming to provide resources for corporate compliance operation and global anti-corruption governance.
Hi everyone, today I'll briefly introduce the Airbus corruption scandal. This is one of the largest international bribery cases involving Airbus, a global aerospace company. Instead of doing business fairly, Airbus used intermediaries to make illegal payments and gain contracts. What makes the case important is its scale and duration. It was organized and lasted for many years. Overall, it shows serious issues in corporate ethics and decision making. Now, let's look at the key facts. The case involved Airbus, its employees, third-party agents, and officials from different countries. Airbus paid bribes through intermediaries to secure business deals. The cooperation happened from 2004 to 2016, and the case was settled in 2020, so it lasted over 10 years. It was a global case involving Europe, the US, and parts of Asia, including China and Malaysia. In short, this was a long-term global corruption case with serious ethical and legal issues.
Okay, I will explain the causes of the Airbus corruption scandal from the structural and institutional perspectives. First, there were serious institutional root. Airbus relied heavily on third-party intermediary to conduct the business in the international market. Although this is a common practice, the lack of strict supervisions allowed these intermediaries to be used higher legal payments, such as bribery and commissions. Second, they were weak to transparency and poor internal control. The company did not implement the parity in systems or raise the management processes, which has made it easier to navigate practice to continue the protections. Finally, the opacity of the cross-border actions made the regulation more difficult. Different legal systems and weak coordinations between the country created opportunities for corruption to long periods to the 2004 to 2016. Okay, next, I will discuss the ethical issues and the failure of the oversight. Firstly, Airbus shows serious ethical deficiencies. The companies prioritize profit and marketed expansion of the ethical responsibility. As a result, practices such as bribery and kickback gradually became normalized with the organizations. Moreover, these actions violate key principles, including the fairness, transparency, and accountability. Secondly, there was a clearly failure of the oversight. Internally, management did not effectively monitor high-risk activities, or enforce price rules. Externally, international regulators were slow to respond to challenges. In addition, the involvement of some officials further weakened the integrity of the system. In conclusion, the scandal was caused by a combination of the institutional weaknesses, ethical failure, and insufficient oversight. Okay.
For this part, I will explain applicable laws and violations in the Airbus corruption scandal. Airbus violated several important anti-corruption laws, including the UK Bribery Act, the United States Foreigners Corrupt Practice Act, and also similar principles under the Malaysia-Macau Act. The main issues in the Airbus used intermediaries to pay bribes to office and business partners. At the same time, those payments were hidden through the complex financing arrangement. This show a lack of transparency and weak corporate governance. In this slide, I will explain the penalties faced by Airbus. Airbus agreed to pay a fine of 3.6 billion euros, which is one of the largest corruption settlements in the history. The company reached agreements with authorities in France, the United Kingdom, and the United States. In addition, Airbus was required to improve an internal compliance system to prevent future misconduct. In my last slide, I would like to explain the legal impact of this case. The Airbus scandal shows a global enforcement of anti-corruption laws is becoming stronger. It also highlights the importance of the cross-border cooperation between countries. More importantly, competence must have a stronger compliance system to prevent occupation. In conclusion, this case shows the corruption may bring the short-term benefits, but it leads serious legal and financial consequences in the long term.
I will briefly analyze the negative impacts and key lessons from the Airbus corruption scandal. First, let's talk about its multi-dimensional negative impacts. Politically, the scandal exposed huge regulatory loopholes in public procurement and aviation approval, and the unclear boundaries between governments and enterprises. It made the public doubt government's credibility and cross-border regulatory coordination, demanded political mutual trust between the relevant countries, and even disrupt local political government's order. Economically, Airbus paid a massive fine, which directly hurt its profits and cash flow. Compliance rectifications also brought extra costs. Related airlines suffered stock slumps and business losses, and Airbus briberies distorted the fair competition of the global industry, shaking investor confidence. Socially, this long-term systematic corruption broke public trust in multinational corporations' social responsibility, intensified public dissatisfaction with commercial corruption, and demanded the sound business atmosphere. Internationally, Airbus brand values plummeted, and European countries was questioned for lax operations, exposing flaws in global cooperative governments. Based on these impacts, we draw three core lessons. First, legally, multinational companies must give up fragments, strictly abide by domestic and foreign anti-corruption laws and international conventions, and build a complete legal compliance systems. Countries also need to strengthen cross-border judicial cooperation and increase corruption penalties. Second, as ethically putting profits first to root cause, enterprises must take integrity and fair competitions as core values, integrate ethics into daily cooperation, and cultivate a corporate compliance culture. Third, in terms of supervision, companies need independent compliance audit departments to avoid regulatory formalisms. Externally, governments should strengthen daily supervisions and improve procurement transparency. Globally, deepening cross-border regulatory cooperation is essential to build a supervision network. In short, this scandal is a sharpie warnings only by abiding by laws, upholding business ethics, and strengthening internal and external supervision can enterprises achieve sustainable development and maintain a fair global business markets. That's all for my presentation.